Before we crack open tonight's cursed can of content, I just want to say a big thank you to all our subscribers, and an extra Sinister shout out to the loyal members of the Sinister Elite. You legends help keep the darkness alive. If you're enjoying the stories and want to take it a step further, hit that like button, make sure you're subscribed, and consider joining the Sinister Elite by clicking that join button below. Members get access to creepy custom emojis and exclusive Sinister Elite badges that level up the longer you survive with us. It's like loyalty, but spookier. All right, lights off, headphones in, and let's summon something we'll all regret. If you're ever driving through Arizona on Route 66 and hunger hits around midnight, there's a place you might spot if you're not blinking. An old roadside diner called Roxy's Stop. Chrome siding, neon signs buzzing like hornets, and a 24/7 sign that's been lit since the 50s. You might think it's charming, nostalgic even. It's not. I've worked night shifts here for the last 8 months. Pay's okay, tips are trash, and the only thing keeping me going is free coffee, and the fact that I live out back in a crusty trailer with a busted AC. But the weird thing about this place isn't the broken jukebox that sometimes plays on its own, or the way the floor always feels sticky even after mopping. It's the rule. There's only one, written in Sharpie on a grease-stained note card above the grill. Never let the man in the green hat sit at booth 9. No name, no warning, just that. I asked my manager Earl about it when I first started. Earl looks like he drinks gravy for breakfast and hasn't slept since 1973. He didn't blink when I asked, just grunted. "You follow that rule, kid, or you won't wake up right." I laughed. He didn't. First couple months I figured it was some local joke, like a scare tactic for newbies. Truckers loved messing with me. Once a regular named Hank came in wearing a John Deere cap and sat at booth 9 just to mess with me. I nearly spilled hot coffee on a nun. But then things started slipping. One night I was refilling napkin holders when I caught a whiff of burnt ozone, like something electrical had fried. The jukebox clicked on by itself, except instead of Elvis or Patsy Cline, it played this static-filled voice muttering numbers. Just numbers. Over and over. 1766-9, booth 9. I looked over and nearly dropped my tray. Someone was sitting there. I didn't see them come in. 1 second the booth was empty. The next, he was just there. Slumped in the seat, facing the window. Green baseball cap pulled low, casting his face in shadow. I couldn't move. Couldn't even blink. My stomach turned to soup. "Excuse me, sir," I managed, throat dry. "That booth's closed for maintenance." He didn't respond, just kept tapping his fingers on the table in a slow, rhythmic pattern, like he was counting time in another language. I didn't know what to do. I glanced back at the kitchen. Earl was gone for the night. It was just me. I reached for the landline. The guy stood up. I didn't see him move, I swear. One blink and he was on his feet, hat still low, and I could feel him watching me, even though his face was still hidden. My ears started ringing like someone had clapped cymbals next to my head. I dropped the phone. He turned, walked out the front door. No noise, no bell, just gone. I locked the door and flipped the sign to closed. Spent the rest of the night shaking behind the counter, clutching a pot of decaf like a security blanket. At dawn, when Earl showed up, I told him what happened. He didn't laugh. He didn't call me crazy. He nodded. "You almost didn't make it." That's all he said before pouring himself coffee and lighting a cigarette with hands that trembled just a little too much. Since that night, I've never let anyone sit at booth 9, even if they argue, even if they get pissed off. One time, a drunk biker tried to fight me over it, and I had to swing a ketchup bottle at his head. Got suspended for 3 days. Worth it. But last night was different. We had a blackout around 2:30 a.m. Power flickered out like someone unplugged the sky. Whole diner went pitch black except for the faint glow of the exit sign and the headlights of a semi out front. I stumbled around with a flashlight, checking breakers. When I came back out, Someone was in booth 9 again. Green hat, hands folded, still as a corpse, but this time he was smiling. I froze. My flashlight shook like a leaf in a hurricane. The man in the green hat was still in booth 9, sitting calmly like he belonged there, like the blackout was his cue. His smile wasn't wide. It wasn't even particularly human. It was just wrong. I couldn't see his eyes beneath the hat's brim, but I felt them on me, like fingers pressing against my skull from the inside. I wanted to scream, to run, but my body had other plans. It just walked me forward, one step at a time, like I was sleepwalking into a furnace. The closer I got, the colder it felt. My breath fogged up in front of me, and the air smelled like rust and ice. The flashlight flickered, then died. Dark. Total. For maybe 5 seconds, I was lost in blackness, holding my breath, ears straining. Then the lights came back on. Just like that. Fluorescence buzzing overhead like nothing happened. But booth 9? Empty. No green hat. No guy. Not even an imprint in the seat. Just a salt shaker. Tipped over, like someone had been messing with it. I checked the door. Still locked. No sign anyone had come in or out. I didn't go back near the booth the rest of the night. Sat behind the counter, shotgun across my lap. Don't ask where I got it. Watching the security monitor. Here's where it gets worse. I rewound the camera feed to just before the blackout. Saw myself walking into the back to check the breakers. The feed skipped, then jumped to the inside of the diner. But everything was mirrored. The furniture was backwards, signs reversed like a reflection. And sitting in booth 9 in the mirrored feed was me. I was wearing a green hat. I slammed the monitor off and threw up in the sink. When Earl came in the next morning, I looked like I'd wrestled a ghost and lost. Bags under my eyes, hands still trembling. I told him what happened. He didn't speak for a long time. Then, he reached under the register and pulled out something I'd never seen before. An old cassette recorder. Brown plastic, cracked, labeled, Booth 9, use only if needed. He handed it to me. Play it if he comes back. Don't fast forward. Don't rewind. Just hit play and leave the building. You understand? I nodded. I didn't understand at all. The next 2 nights were quiet. Almost too quiet. Like the diner was holding its breath. Truckers came in. I served them pie. Everyone avoided booth 9 without even needing to be told. Maybe the diner remembers. Then came last night. A storm rolled in around midnight. Lightning dancing like devils across the desert sky. Wind so strong the sign out front started swinging like it was ready to take flight. I was closing up early when the power cut again. Same as before. Flashlight ready this time. I turned it on, swept the beam across the diner. He was back. Same green hat, same smile. Only this time, he wasn't alone. There were 4 other figures sitting around him in the booth. Identical posture, identical hats. Heads all tilted slightly to the side like curious dogs. I backed away, nearly tripping over a bar stool. The recorder. I ran to the counter, grabbed it, hit play, and bolted out the door. The tape clicked, hissed, and then played what I can only describe as a mix of warbled diner chatter and reverse jazz music, like if Miles Davis composed in a nightmare. I sat on the curb outside in the storm, listening through the glass, watching the booth. For 10 minutes, the figures didn't move. Then, slowly, one by one, they faded out. Not like smoke. Like a VHS tape being rewound too fast. The last to go was the original one. The smile lingered longest. When the lights flickered back on, the recorder clicked off on its own. I went back inside, shaken like a leaf in a blender. Booth 9 was empty again. But now, there's a new note above the grill. Same handwriting. Same ink. Only this one says, "Never let the man in the green hat sit at booth 9. Or booth 6. Booth 6 is directly across from it. Facing it. And guess what, my dude? The salt shaker was tipped over there this morning." When I saw the salt shaker tipped on booth 6, I just stood there staring like it was a loaded gun. The note was clear. Booth 9 was bad, but booth 6? Now that was new. And that meant something had changed. I taped an out-of-order sign to both booths using duct tape and the back of a Waffle Wednesday flyer. Didn't care how it looked. No one's sitting in those damn seats, not while I'm still breathing. Earl didn't say a word when he came in for his morning shift. He just eyed the booths, nodded once, and poured himself a cup of coffee so thick it looked like motor oil. "You played the tape?" "Yeah," I said, hands still trembling. They vanished after. But now it's spreading. Booth 6 Earl gave me a long look. "Booth 6 faces the window." "Okay." "That's where he first appeared. Green hat, before you started. Sat at 6, just watched the window, every time, like he was waiting." I swallowed hard. "For what?" "Hell if I know," Earl muttered. "But if he moves again, you let me know. Don't try to handle it alone." For the rest of the day, I couldn't get that image out of my head. The man in the green hat just watching the window, like something was out there, waiting to come in. That night, the air felt off. Even before sunset, I noticed the temperature drop. My breath fogged up inside, like winter had seeped in through the walls. At exactly 3:03 a.m., same time the Static Jazz tape ended 2 nights ago, the jukebox powered up on its own and started playing a song I'd never heard. Lyrics didn't make sense. Something like, "Down the road and past the sign, don't look back, you'll do just fine. But if you see the driver's eyes, you're already out of time." And then it looped, over and over. I unplugged the jukebox. It kept playing. Outside, headlights flashed in the distance. I peeked through the blinds. A long black car with no plates was idling in the parking lot. Its lights were on, but there was no driver. I'm not saying I couldn't see them. I'm saying there was literally no one behind the wheel. And yet, the engine was running, and the driver's side door slowly opened on its own. The car just sat there like an open casket. That's when I heard the bell above the door jingle. Someone had walked in. I turned around and my heart jumped into my throat. The man in the green hat was back, but now his hat was backwards like a mirrored version of himself. He didn't sit in booth 9 or 6. He sat at the counter, right across from me. I stared. He stared back. No blinking, no breathing, just that smile. I was frozen in place. Then he spoke. "You broke the loop." His voice sounded like radio static run through a wood chipper. I blinked and his smile widened. "Most don't make it to tape 2. He reached into his coat. I flinched, but instead of a weapon, he pulled out a folded napkin. He slid it across the counter. It had something scribbled in red pen, same handwriting as the note above the grill. "Booth 2 is next." "What does this mean?" I choked out. He tapped his temple. "It means you're learning the rules. Most people never do." Then he stood up, backed toward the door without breaking eye contact, and said something that chilled my bones. "Don't watch the car, leave!" Then he walked out. I ran to the door and shut the blinds. I did not watch the car leave. I waited 2 full hours, drinking black coffee, staring at the napkin. At sunrise, I peeked outside. The car was gone. No tire marks, no footprints. But booth 2? Another salt shaker, tipped. I grabbed the cassette recorder. It was warm, almost like it had been used. I opened the tape compartment. There was a new one inside, labeled simply, "Tape 2. Only if he speaks." When your hands shake too much to pour coffee, you know it's time to reconsider your career choices. That was me at 6:47 a.m., staring at booth 2 like it was a loaded gun. Another tipped salt shaker. Another move on the board. I'd always thought the job here was simple. Flip burgers, refill coffee, mop the floor, ignore the drunk truckers. But ever since that man in the green hat showed up, I realized this wasn't a restaurant. It was a trap. Not for me. For something else. And now somehow I was the new bait. I sat in the back room with that second cassette in my hand for nearly 2 hours. The label, "Only if he speaks," kept echoing in my head. Because last night, he spoke, clear as day. "You broke the loop." "What loop? What happens if it starts again? What if I can't stop it?" I didn't tell Earl right away. I knew what he'd say. That same worn-out grunt, maybe another weird warning wrapped in a cup of Folgers. But I needed more than that. I needed answers. Real ones. So that night, before the shift started, I went digging. There's a storage room behind the freezer no one uses anymore. Old paperwork, busted coffee pots, broken booths. I figured if this place had secrets, they were in there. I found a box labeled Employee Files, 1996. Inside were stacks of folders, mostly boring stuff, schedules, performance reviews, one guy who got fired for eating pancakes off customer plates. But at the very bottom, I found a folder marked Incident Report, Green Hat. There were 5 pages, all handwritten. The first entry was dated 1979. Truck driver reported seeing man in green cap sitting in booth 6, staring out window for over 3 hours. No food ordered. When asked to leave, man said, "I'm just waiting for the flicker." Then vanished mid-conversation. The next entries were just as bizarre. Every few years he'd show up, same hat, same booth, always during storms or blackouts, sometimes alone, sometimes with others. One page caught my eye. 1996. Employee Stephen M. spoke to the man. Heard the phrase, "Don't follow the driver." 2 hours later, Stephen left in his truck. Found upside down in the ravine the next morning. No tire marks, no tracks. There was a Polaroid paper clip to it. Stephen, smiling behind the counter. In the background, out the window, barely visible, was a shadowy figure in a green hat, facing away. I shoved the folder under my hoodie and went back to the front. By midnight, things felt different. The air was too still. Even the jukebox stayed silent. Not a single customer came in. It was like the world took the night off. At 2:33 a.m. I heard it. The bell over the door jingled, but not just once. Jingle, pause, jingle, pause, jingle, 3 times. I stepped out from behind the counter and froze. There were 3 of them now. 3 men in green hats. One sitting in booth 9, one in booth 6, one in booth 2. All silent. All perfectly still. They weren't copies. They were variations. One had a torn jacket. One wore sunglasses even in the dim light. One had blood on his knuckles. And they were all staring at the window. I backed up slowly, almost tripping over a bar stool, and fumbled the cassette player from under the register. My hands hovered over the play button. One of them, the one with the torn jacket, turned his head toward me. His mouth opened. "You didn't play the tape." I hit play. The machine clicked. At first, nothing. Then a voice, mechanical, warped, filled the diner. "You are now listening to tape 2. This message is not for you. This message is for them." The men in the booths all slowly turned to face the ceiling like they were watching something above that I couldn't see. The lights flickered once. Then the power went out completely. In the dark, the tape continued. "You are uninvited. You are unremembered. Return to the flicker." A low humming filled the room, like a generator buried underground. Then came the scream. Not human. Not even animal. It was like metal tearing open the sky. When the lights snapped back on, the booths were empty again. All 3. I sank to my knees, cassette player still running. Earl found me that way when he came in at dawn. I handed him the tape. He looked at the spinning reels. "You played it." "They talked," I whispered. "All 3 of them. Why are there more now?" Earl poured 2 mugs of coffee, sat across from me and sighed. "They always multiply before the loop resets." "What loop?" "The one you broke, kid." He pointed out the window. In the parking lot was a single black tire mark, spiraling in a perfect circle. "Whatever they are," he said, "they're trying to rewrite something. Each booth's a point on the loop, and when all 7 are filled..." 7? He nodded solemnly. They come back. I glanced over at booth 4. The salt shaker was still upright. For now. The 7th booth. That's what Earl said. 7 points on a loop. 7 chairs to be filled. And once they're all occupied, they come back. I didn't sleep after that. Spent my morning shift pacing, replaying every second of last night in my head. The 3 men. The mirrored smiles. The voice on the tape. Return to the flicker. I didn't know what that meant, but I had a feeling I'd find out. Earl didn't come in the next night. Said he needed time to gather something from the hills. No idea what that meant, but I've learned not to question Earl. By 11 p.m., I was alone again. The booth stared back at me. 9, 6, and 2 still closed, all their salt shakers tipped sideways like fallen tombstones. I taped "Do Not Sit" signs to booths 1, 3, 4, 5, and 7, just in case. Didn't matter. At 12:12 a.m., the power didn't flicker. It roared off, blacked out so fast it popped one of the lights above the counter. I scrambled for my flashlight, my fingers barely working from how cold it suddenly got. Frost began creeping across the windows. It was May. Then came the bell, jingle, and footsteps, but not just one set, or 3, 6. I turned and saw them. 6 men, all in green hats, all entering single file, each one unique, each one glitching ever so slightly, like their skin couldn't decide how real it wanted to be. One of them, his face blurred like a scrambled VHS, turned to me and smiled. "Almost time," he said in that familiar static-drenched voice. They sat. Booths 1, 2, 3, 6, 7, and 9. Only booth 4 remained empty. The center. I was shaking so bad I could barely keep my flashlight steady. They all turned to look at me, heads tilted like mannequins being reset for display. Then the jukebox sparked to life without power. It played that same warped song. "Don't look back, you'll do just fine. But if you see the driver's eyes..." Then it glitched. The song reversed, slowed, twisted into a new melody. One by one, each man in the booths turned their head toward booth 4, and something started to rise from the seat. I couldn't look away. It was shaped like a man, but it was made of shadows. No face, no limbs, just a suit of empty clothes stitched together by darkness. And in place of a head, a green hat floated in midair, slowly spinning. It sat down in booth 4, and the loop was complete. The diner began to vibrate. Cups rattled. The floor throbbed like a heartbeat. The exit sign melted. I ran behind the counter and grabbed the final cassette. Tape 3, only if the loop completes, and shoved it into the recorder. I hit play. Click. Nothing. Then a voice, low and calm. "If you are hearing this, the flicker has begun. Do not run. Do not hide. Do not speak to the man in booth 4. Your only hope is to finish the loop." I didn't know what that meant, until I looked down at the counter and saw the napkin. The same handwriting. Only this time, it didn't say which booth to avoid. It said, "Sit in booth 8. Complete the pattern. Face the flicker." Booth 8 was the only one untouched, the one directly behind the counter. I took one breath and sat. Everything stopped. The jukebox, the power, even the shadows. All 7 men turned to me. Their faces shifted, some melting, some aging in reverse, some glitching like broken film. The one in booth 4 stood. The hat dropped to the table. He opened his mouth, and light poured out. Not just light. Images. Memories. Hundreds of faces, places, lives. I saw myself working this diner 1,000 times. Different choices, different outcomes. I saw me die, over and over, in fires, in car wrecks, on the floor of the kitchen, always ending the same way. The flicker wins, unless the loop completes. The man in booth 4 stepped forward, held out his hand, palm up. Inside it, a coin, old, rusted, the Route 66 shield on one side, my face on the other. He dropped it. It hit the floor, and the entire diner reset. Lights on, jukebox quiet, booths empty. No men, no shadows, just me and Earl. He stood in the doorway, holding a black bag in one hand. "You sat in booth 8, didn't you?" I nodded. "Then you're the new anchor." I stood, trembling. "Anchor?" He dropped the bag on the counter. Inside, 7 blank tapes. "You'll be recording the next loop." "I don't want this." "You think I did?" I looked out the window. A truck passed on Route 66. Its headlights flickered. A man in a green hat sat in the passenger seat, watching me. The green hat still sat on Booth 4's table, untouched, casting a faint glow like it was radioactive. I didn't want to get close, but it felt like it was pulling at me. Not physically, not even psychically, just magnetically, like it belonged to me now. Earl poured himself another cup of sludge and sat on the counter like this was just another Tuesday. "You've got 2 choices," he said, sipping. "Put the hat on, or leave it here and wait until the next flicker." "What happens if I put it on?" He shrugged. "Then you'll know." That wasn't helpful. I stared at the booth. My reflection in the window behind it looked wrong, delayed, like the world needed to buffer. My fingers moved before my brain agreed. I walked over and picked up the hat. It was heavier than I expected. Cold, like it had just come from somewhere far away. "Kid," Earl called, suddenly serious. "If you wear that thing, you're not just clocking in anymore. You're clocking on." I hesitated, and then I put it on. Everything stopped. I wasn't in the diner anymore. I was above it, outside time, floating like static between channels. The world below was playing on an infinite reel, over and over, looping like a scratched disc. Truckers walking in, coffee being poured, men in green hats sitting, and sitting, and sitting, and in all of them, I was there. Sometimes I made it, sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I became one of them. But this time, I was watching from the outside. I understood now. The diner was never a building. It was a barrier, a weak point along Route 66 where something ancient brushes against reality. Every few years, the veil gets too thin, and the flicker tries to bleed through. The booths, anchors, the tapes, warnings, the hat was the key. I felt a presence beside me, familiar. Earl. Only not Earl. Not exactly. His voice echoed, distant and hollow. "We've all worn it once, some longer than others. That's how you hold the flicker back, but you don't get to leave." I looked down. A new me stood behind the counter, wiping it clean. Normal, breathing, living. He had no idea. "You said I had 2 choices," I said. Earl nodded in the void. "You chose both.